good to have you join me on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria. From the international belt, United Nations Security Council condemns Myanmar junta. Japan begins release of Fukushima water. Latest North Korea spy satellite launch fails. On U.S. politics, first Republican U.S. presidential debate, and India celebrates historic feat of Chandrayaan-3. Members of the United Nations Security Council, with the exclusion of veto-wielding China and Russia, have condemned the unrelenting violence intense across Myanmar following a closed-door briefing in the crunch. The 13 council members again asked the generals who led a coup against the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi in February 2021 to end the violence and stop killing civilians, noting there had been insufficient progress on implementing December's landmark Security Council regulation on Myanmar. Britain's Deputy United Nations Ambassador James Kiriaki, as he read out the statement at United Nations headquarters in New York on Wednesday, said, "We remain deeply concerned about the situation in Myanmar and its impact on the people of Myanmar." Envoys from the 12 other countries that had signed up to the statement stood along Kariuki as he reiterated their precise worry over the use of airstrikes. He said the council had been briefed by Relief Chief Martin Griffiths, who visited Myanmar last week in a visit that has been criticized by civil society groups working in and on Myanmar. Assistant Secretary General Khalid Kari also updated the council on struggles to resolve the crisis stoked by the coup. The generals triggered a mass rebellion when they seized power, jailing Aung San Suu Kyi and the elected government, and the situation has now worsened into what some have described as a civil war. The military, while a pariah on the international stage, has deepened connections with Russia and turned to air power to end the uprising, ignoring a plan to end violence that it agreed with its fellow members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, 2 months after seizing power. Kariuki said over 18 million people in Myanmar were in need of humanitarian support as a result of the crunch, and 2 million had been forced from their homes. Some 15 million people were food insecure, he added. The council meeting also deliberated a report this month by United Nations independent investigators who said Myanmar's military and its affiliated militias are committing progressively continuous and brazen war crimes. Japan has begun releasing treated radioactive water from the devastated Fukushima nuclear power plant, despite ongoing controversy over the decades-long discharge plan. The seawater transfer pump started the release into the Pacific shortly after 1 p.m. local time, with plant operator Tokyo Electric Power Company TEPCO announcing earlier that weather and sea conditions were suitable. Now valves near the seawater transport pumps are opening, a TEPCO official at the company's Tokyo headquarters said. Over 1 million metric tons of the treated water used to cool the damaged reactors after the 2011 tsunami is presently stored in some 1,000 tanks around the site, and its removal is a vital part of decommissioning the still highly dangerous facility. The whole discharge process is anticipated to take as long as 40 years. Monitors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which has supported the plan, will be on site for the discharge, and samples of water and fish will be taken. Japan says all radioactive elements have been filtered out except tritium, which is hard to remove from the water. The hydrogen isotope is also discharged at higher levels by operational nuclear power plants, including in China and France. The company will carry out 4 releases of treated water until March 2024, with 7,800 cubic meters of water released each time. The discharge that has just begun is expected to take about 17 days. The water will contain about 190 becquerels of tritium per liter, below the World Health Organization drinking water limit of 10,000 becquerels per liter, according to TEPCO. A becquerel is a measure of radioactivity. Now, in a latest attempt, North Korea sent a military spy satellite into orbit, which ended in failure for a second time. In the early hours of Thursday morning, the launch took place the first day of a week-long launch window, but failed because of a problem with the third stage of the rocket carrying the satellite. North Korea said it will try again in October. South Korea's military said it detected the launch from the Saho satellite launching station about 3:50 a.m. local time on Wednesday and tracked the rocket as it traversed international airspace over the Yellow Sea. About 10 minutes later, residents of Japan's southernmost prefecture of Okinawa received emergency warnings advising them to take cover indoors. The emergency warning was lifted after about 20 minutes. According to reports, some of the debris may have landed in the Pacific near the Philippines. The spy satellite is a priority of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's plan to modernize the country's military and develop cutting-edge weapons. The first launch attempt in May also ended in disaster, with officials calling it their gravest failure and pledging to try again. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno said the repeated missile launches were a threat to regional security. South Korea's National Security Council also condemned the launch, saying it breached United Nations Security Council resolutions banning Pyongyang's use of ballistic missile technology. The United States echoed that statement and urged North Korea to refrain from further threatening activity and engage in serious diplomacy. According to a State Department spokesperson in a statement, space launch vehicles (SLVs) incorporate technologies that are identical to and interchangeable with those used in ballistic missiles, including intercontinental ballistic missiles (ICBMs). The foreign ministers of three countries agreed to consider unilateral sanctions in response to the launch, according to South Korea's foreign ministry. The launch came days after the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. met in Washington, D.C., and as U.S. and South Korean forces conduct their yearly Ulchi Freedom Shield military drills, North Korea claims such exercises are a rehearsal for war. Moving now to politics in the United States, 8 Republican presidential hopefuls have clashed over a range of issues in the first debate of the 2024 United States election season, from aid to Ukraine, abortion rights, and former U.S. President Donald Trump's legal troubles. On Wednesday night, the candidates took the stage in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, hoping to chip away at Trump's commanding lead in the race for the GOP nomination. With the ex-president skipping the event and instead sitting down for an interview with conservative host Tucker Carlson, the debate presented an opportunity for Trump's challengers to try to appeal to millions of voters. But nevertheless, Trump was a big presence even though he wasn't in the room. Nyambi Carter, an associate professor in the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland, said, according to reports. The White House hopefuls criticized U.S. President Joe Biden's record and had heated exchanges over foreign policy, including U.S. aid to Ukraine and domestic issues ranging from public safety and abortion to education and the American economy. India's space agency said the new moon rover of India's Chandrayaan-3 has exited the spacecraft to start its exploration of the lunar surface. On Wednesday evening, the spacecraft landed on the unexplored south pole of the moon, days after Russia's Luna 25 failed, making India the first country to achieve that feat. The Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, said in its message on Thursday morning that the CH-3 rover ramped down from the lander and India took a walk on the moon. Accomplished with a budget of about 6.15 billion Indian rupees, that's 74.58 million US dollars, this was India's second attempt to touch down on the moon. An earlier mission in 2019, Chandrayaan-2 successfully deployed an orbiter, but its lander crashed. Chandra means moon vehicle in Hindi and Sanskrit. The moon's rugged south pole is sought after because of its water ice, which is believed to be capable of providing fuel, oxygen, and drinking water for future missions, but its rough terrain makes landing challenging. People across the country tuned in to watch the landing on Wednesday, with over 7 million people viewing the YouTube live stream alone. Chandrayaan-3 is anticipated to remain functional for 2 weeks, running experiments, including a spectrometer analysis of the lunar surface's mineral composition. More stories here says Wagner chief presumed dead in plane crash. Yevgeny Prigozhin, Russian Wagner mercenary leader, was on the passenger list of a jet which crashed in Russia, killing all 10 people on board, Russia's Civil Aviation Authority says. Social media linked to the Wagner mercenary group say his private plane was shot down by Russian air defenses. Prigozhin led a halted mutiny against Russia's armed forces in June. However, some experts in Russia and abroad suggest the revolt was staged and Prigozhin abandoned his justice march in Moscow after direct orders from President Vladimir Putin. Wednesday's crash in the Tver region, northwest of the capital, Moscow, comes on the same day that senior Russian General Sergei Surovikin was reportedly sacked as Air Force Chief. General Surovikin was known to have good relations with Prigozhin and had not been seen in public since the mutiny. On Wednesday, Prigozhin's aircraft, an Embraer 135 EBM 135BJ, was flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg with 7 passengers and 3 crew, Russia's Rossvazia Aviation Authority said. Senior Wagner commander Dmitry Utkin, who founded the group in 2014, was also on the passenger list, it said. The plane is reported to have come down near the village of Kuzenkino, about halfway between Moscow and St. Petersburg. One report said the body of Prigozhin 62 had been found and identified. This has not been officially confirmed. According to reports, all 10 bodies have been recovered. An investigation has been launched into the crash, and emergency services are searching the scene. The mercenary group has about 25,000 fighters. It has been active in Ukraine, Syria, and West Africa and has gained a reputation for brutality. Prigozhin headed the mutiny on 23rd to 24th June, moving his troops from Ukraine, seizing the southern Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, and threatening to march on Moscow. The move came after months of tension with Russian military commanders over the invasion of Ukraine launched by President Putin in 2014. The standoff seemed to have been settled by a deal which permitted Wagner troops to move to Belarus or join the Russian army. Prigozhin himself agreed to relocate to Belarus, but has apparently been able to move freely, making public appearances in Russia and releasing a video of him purportedly in Africa. In African scenes, elections in Zimbabwe enter second day. Election officials prolonged voting in Zimbabwe's presidential election until Thursday after delays of up to 10 hours in mostly opposition strongholds as President Emmerson Mnangagwa seeks a second term and final term in country with a history of violent and disputed elections. Chaotic scenes characterized some polling stations in Zimbabwe as ballot papers that had been delivered up to 10 hours late ran out, forcing officials to suspend voting Wednesday night in many stations, especially in large urban areas, including the capital, Harare. People pushed and shouted at election officials and police officers after they were told to return Thursday morning because ballot papers for local council elections had run out at the Hague Park Primary School polling station in Harare. Some stations had not received ballot papers by 7 p.m. when voting was scheduled to close. I waited 5 years to vote, and these hours wouldn't kill me, said Catherine Nyanka Dunga. This is the second general election since the overthrow of long-term ruler Robert Mugabe in a coup in 2017. 12 presidential candidates are on the ballot, but the major contest is expected to be between 80-year-old Mnangagwa, known as the Crocodile, and 45-year-old opposition leader Nelson Chamisa. Mnangagwa narrowly beat Chamisa in a disputed election in 2018. Chamisa hopes to break the ruling ZANU-PF party's 43-year-old on power. Zimbabwe has had only 2 leaders since gaining independence from white minority rule in 1980. A runoff election will be held on October 2nd if no candidate wins a clear majority in the first round. The election also determines the makeup of 350-seat parliament and closely 2,000 local council positions. The Southern African nation of 15 million people has vast mineral resources, including Africa's largest reserves of lithium, a key component in making electric cars batteries. But watchdogs have long suspected that widespread corruption and mismanagement have courted much of the country's potential. European Union Chief Election Observer Fabio Massimo Castaldo said, according to reports, that around 30% of polling stations in Harare had significant delays in opening, often linked to the lack of essential materials, notably, in many cases, paper ballots. The Zimbabwe Election Support Network, a non-governmental organization, said the delays were disproportionately concentrated in urban areas, which are opposition strongholds. This is very strange, Nevers Mbumba, head of the regional Southern African Development Community Observer Mission, said. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission acknowledged the late distribution of ballot papers at some polling stations and blamed it on the printing delays arising from numerous court challenges. Governing party activists and the opposition had brought a flurry of cases over who could run in both presidential and parliamentary elections. Stay with me for more stories on Nigeria after this break. Thanks for staying with us. Now, stories from Nigeria says Emefiele opts for plea bargain deal. Yesterday, indications emerged that the embattled suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Godwin Emefiele, may be exploring a plea bargain deal with the federal government. This is even as he scheduled fresh indictment before the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, sitting in Maitama, was again stalled yesterday. Neither Emefiele nor his co-defendant in the 20-count corruption charge the federal government entered before the court, Mrs. Sadat Yaro, were present for the proceeding. Though trial justice Hamza Muazu, who is sitting as the vacation judge, was on seat, however, Emefiele's case was not listed on the court's course list. An official of the court who spoke on condition of anonymity said the case could not proceed as planned due to fresh developments in the matter. Meanwhile, one of the defense lawyers in the matter who dropped clue of the plea bargain said the move to settle the case out of court was at the instance of the former Central Bank of Nigeria boss. He said the new trial date may likely to be issued by the Chief Judge of the High Court, Justice Hussein Baba Yusuf. A plea bargain is a negotiated term of settlement in criminal trials that permits a defendant to plead guilty to a lesser offense or reduced charge in exchange for a reduction in sentence or dismissal of the charges. The terms of agreement between the prosecution and the defendant are subsequently accepted by the trial court, which adopts same as its judgment in the matter. Such arrangement is allowed under Section 270, subsection 1 and subsection 2 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, ACJA 2015. Recall that Emefiele's arraignment was equally delayed on August 17th following the absence of the second defendant, Mrs. Yaro, who is the staff of the Apex Bank rather. Now, APC says rising concerns over NWC positions. The All Progressives Congress, APC, has been entangled into a fresh crisis as the leadership has rezoned the party's national women's leader position to Edo State, as the ex-national women leader and Minister for Humanitarian Affairs, Dr. Betta Edu, stormed the party's secretariat to protest. The APC national chairman, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, however, left the minister at the secretariat. Also, the governor of Imo State, Senator Hope Uzodimma, also has been replaced. The candidate of the deputy speaker, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, for the National Welfare Secretary with his candidate, Honorable Donatus Mpapa. It was alleged that the deputy speaker had chosen the former speaker, Abia State House of Assembly, Honorable Martis Unzubike, to replace late Chief Friday Nwosu, who died in March, as the National Welfare Secretary. But yesterday, after the National Working Committee NWC meeting of the party, the name of Unzubike was replaced with Honorable Donatus Mpapa, an alleged candidate of Governor Uzodimma, was the former Abia State chairman of APC. On the list released by APC after the NWC meeting, Mrs. Mary Alile Edele from Edo State was used to replace Mrs. Stella Ode-Ekpo from Cross River State. The office of the APC National Women Leader was zoned to Cross River, and the occupant, Dr. Betta Edu, is now the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. The minister had brought Mrs. Ode-Ekpo as her replacement, going by the zoning arrangement, but this was changed on the complaint of Edo APC championed by the former governor of the state, Senator Adams Oshomole. Oshomole had stormed the party secretariat on Tuesday, according to party source, to complain of Cross River State having 2 ministerial slots, therefore demanded that the position of the national women leader be rezoned to Edo State. Also, the replacement for the Deputy National Publicity Secretary, Duro Mesako, was brought by Honorable James Falake, a party member, said it is causing problems. Other replacements made by Deputy National Chairman North, Honorable Ali Bukar Dalori, National Vice Chairman Northwest, Honorable Garba Datti Mohammed, National Legal Advisor, Professor Abdul Karim Abubakar, Kana, and Zonal Organizing Secretary, Ikani Shwa Ibo Okolo. The National Secretary, Senator Ajibola Basiru, speaking after the meeting, said, "We are here to brief you on behalf of our party, first in the upcoming off-season gubernatorial elections. Work is in advanced stage on the composition of the campaign council, and hopefully by next week the list will be out. We also had discussion around how to expand the membership of the party in between the general election. During the last NEC meeting, the NEC empowered the NWC of the party to fill the existing vacancies occasioned due to the resignation and death of the National Welfare Officer of the party. In continuance of the party vested on the NWC of the party, we have elected the following persons to fill the existing vacant positions: Deputy National Chairman North, Zone to Northeast, Honorable Ali Bukar Dalori of Borno; National Vice Chairman Northwest, Honorable Garba Detsi Mohammed of Kaduna; National Legal Advisor Zone to North Central, Professor Abdul Karim Abubakar Kana of Nasarawa State; Deputy National Publicity Secretary Zone to North Central, Dulo Miseko Kogi; Zonal Organizing Secretary Zone to North Central, Ikani Shwaibu Okolo of Kogi State; National Welfare Secretary Zone to Southeast, Honorable Donatus Nwakba Abia; National Women Leaders Zone to South-South, Dr. Mary Alile Adela of Edo. Asked when the elected NWC members will be sworn in, he said yes, there is swearing in our constitution, but I don't know when and where for now. And finally, on the news, 17 commissioner nominees rejected by Lagos Assembly. Lagos State House of Assembly has rejected 17 of the 39 commissioner nominees sent by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Most of the affected nominees served with the governor in his first term. The commissioner nominees rejected by the House were Mrs. Folashade Ade Fisayo, Education; Professor Akin Abayomi, Health; Benga Omotosho, Information and Strategy; Olalere Odotsote, Energy; Sam Egbube, Economics, Budget and Planning; Mrs. Solakbe Hamoud, Mrs. Cecilia Dada, Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation; Mrs. Aramide Ade Yoye, Works and Infrastructure. Others: Yomi Oluyomi, Mrs. Folashade Ambrose, Mrs. Barakat Bakare, Rotimi Fashola, Olalekon Fatodu, Mosope Folu George, Sheun Oshiemi, Rotimi Ogunwimi, and Olumide Oluyinka. Those confirmed were Layode Ibrahim, Mr. Mobolaji Ogunlede, Dr. Dolapo Fasowe, Bola Olumeshegbon, Mrs. Idris Aregbe, Mrs. Abishola Ruth Olasanya, Mr. Moruf Akindere Fatai, Mr. Kayode Bolaji Roberts, Engineer Abiola Olowu, Mrs. Toke Benson Owoyika, and Dr. Oriowoluwa Fini Okwokoya. Others are Mr. Yakub Adedoye Alebiosu, Mr. Lawal Pedro San, Mr. Tombusun Alake, Mr. Benga Oyerinde, Dr. Adekunle Olayinka, Dr. Jide Babatunde, Mr. Afolabi Ayentayo, Mr. Tokumbo Wahab, Mr. Olakunle Rotimi Akodu, Mr. Jamiu Ali Balukun, and Mr. Abdul Kabir Okongbobe. Speaker of the House, Modoshiru Obasa, speaking at the plenary, said the confirmation followed arduous and detailed screening of the nominees by an ad hoc committee led by the Chief Whip of the House, Fatai Mujid. Obasa applauded the committee for its efficiency and urged the confirmed nominees to always remember that they are in office to serve the people of the state and not individuals. The confirmation was done through a voice vote as he mentioned the name of each of the nominees. To refresh our memories, UN Security Council condemns Myanmar junta. Japan begins release of Fukushima water. Latest North Korea spy satellite launch fails on U.S. politics. First Republican U.S. presidential debate. And India celebrates historic feat of Chandrayaan-3. That's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Reki.